Hello, kiddos. In Math 7, we are getting ready to start our first official notes of the year. And this is just my comp book that we worked on putting together yesterday. And I am on page 7. And so I would like you to make sure that you turn in your comp book to the next page after the 3 reads. And I need you to write up at the top, Module 1. And it is called Ratios and Proportional Relationships. And we are going to only write the module name one time. And then when we get done with that module and we start a new module, then we'll write the next module up at the top. So this is how we write the module name for the first time, and we only do it one time in our set of notes. And so now we're going to get started with our next set of notes that we are going to begin. And I like to do my notes with colored pens, just to let you know, because I think it's a little more exciting. So I will be changing my pen color because I like to. You don't have to if you don't want to, or you can, depending on what you like to do. So the first thing that we do when we take notes in this math class is we have to put the name of the title of the lesson up at the top. And so the name of this title is An Experience in Relationships as Measuring Rate. So I'll write that for you as well so that you can see it. An experience in relationships as measuring rates. So hopefully this is making your brain do a little bit of recall right now, talking back in when you were in 6th grade math, the differences between ratios and rates, and hopefully when you see this, you're going to be able to do, oh yeah, I remember how to do this, and it will all start trickling back for you. When we do take notes in Math 7, what we have to do is we have to keep our goal for our lesson in mind. And what our goal is it tells us what our job is during this lesson, what we are supposed to learn and what we are supposed to know. So the goal for today is, today we are going to learn about computing unit rates related to ratios of quantities measured in different units. That's a really long goal. So I'm going to write it out and then we'll talk about it. So our goal for today, like I said, is today we are going to learn about computing unit rates related to ratios of quantities measured in different units. Now, the interesting thing about that is that you just finished your 3 reads with me in class, and so you should be able to make the connection about quantities because we do now know what quantities are. So today we are going to learn about computing unit rates. So that means we're finding the unit rates related to ratios of quantities measured in different units. So that means that one part of the rate will have a label and the other part of the rate will have a different label. So that's what this means, and that's what we're talking about today. So a question that I want you to keep in mind for your learning is, how is finding the unit rate helpful when making comparisons between quantities? Okay? And we're going to write that together right now. So the question for this lesson is, how is finding a unit rate helpful when making comparisons between quantities. Okay, so basically the gist of this question is the unit rate helpful and how? Okay, and I think that after you see what we're going to do in today's lesson, you're going to find out that finding the unit rate is amazingly helpful, and it will be fun for you to figure out how to do that if you don't already know. All right, so we're going to start off today's lesson with that question in mind, but also with a task. And boys and girls, it is important to me and to you that you do copy the task down into your comp books, because the task is what we're going to be referencing throughout the entire lesson. So we are going to write in a class, there are 14 boys and 19 girls. In another class, there are 12 boys and 17 girls. So we're talking about two different classrooms. One has 14 boys and 19 girls, and the other has 12 boys and 17 girls. So the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do with this information from the task is we're going to use the 3-read strategy to help us figure some information out. Who can remember what the first read is about? What do we do in the first read? Hopefully you're remembering. In the first read, what we do is we read to find out what the story is about. So everybody read it again quietly to yourself. And in the first read, what is the task about? That's what we have to answer. So we're going to go ahead and answer that. What is this task about? What did we just learn? Okay, I'm thinking that it is the ratio of boys to girls in school classes, and I hope you agree. So this task is about the ratio of boys to girls in school classes. Okay? All right, so nice job. We know what it's about. We're talking about ratios. So in the second read, what we are trying to find is the quantities. So in the second read, you need to determine what are the quantities of the task. So we're going to read it again. So second read, what are the quantities of the task? Okay, so let's read it again. In a class, there are 14 boys and 19 girls. In another class, there are 12 boys and 17 girls. Okay, so what information did we figure out? I think that we can make a table of the quantities, remembering that a quantity is a specific unit with a number attached. So if we look up here, if we're looking for the quantities, here's a number with a unit, here's a number with a unit, here's a number with a unit, and here's a number with a unit. So I think by finding those 4 different quantities in our second read, we now can build our table. So we're going to write, let's make a table of the quantities. Okay, and we're actually going to make a horizontal table. So I'm going to draw a straight line across here, and then I need to have 4 different categories. So we're going to do one line there, so that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and up at the top, you're going to put number of boys, right? What do you think the next one's going to be? Number of girls. Nice job. And the last one is going to be ratio of boys to girls. So right here, you're going to write ratio of boys to girls. Hopefully you're remembering that word and why it's important. Ratio of boys to girls. And we're going to call this one class 1, so that'll be the first one, and class 2 is the second one. Okay? Hopefully everybody's with me and you're doing okay. So, in the first class, we have 14 boys. In the first class, we have 19 girls. In the second class, we have 12 boys, and in the second class, we have 17 girls. So now, in the last column, you can't see. In the last column, you are supposed to write a ratio of boys to girls, of boys to girls. So we need to write exactly that. Boys are 14 to girls, which is 19. So everybody understand and remember this, because you learned all of this in 6th grade. So how would we write the ratio for the next class? That is correct, 12 to 17. Nice job. Okay? So hopefully that was a good quick review of reminding you of what ratios are. And now we have to do our third read, remembering that we're still using our same task. So for our third read, what is the focus of the third read? Who remembers? And I'll write my title up there in just a minute. So the third read is, what is the relationship of the quantities? Remember, because the third read, you're always looking for the relationship of quantities. So we're going to read our task one more time. We're going to read it again, and then we're going to figure out the relationship. So the task says, in a class, there are 14 boys and 19 girls. In another class, there are 12 boys and 17 girls. So looking at that and thinking about that, what is a relationship between the quantities that we can see? How about something about the ratios? So I think that for class 1, we could write the number of boys to the number of girls is a ratio of 14 to 19. Okay? So then that was class 1, yes? Then class 2 would be the number of boys to the number of girls in class 2 is a ratio of 12 to 17. So basically the relationship of these quantities is building a ratio. That is the relationship. So underline those words, a ratio. And that is the relationship of the quantities. Remembering that this is class 1 and this is class 2. Nice job. Okay, So we kind of found out some interesting information from our task, okay? And I do have some questions for you. In class 1, is the ratio of boys to girls equivalent to the ratio of boys to girls in class 2? What do you think? So I'm asking you if the two ratios from class 1 and class 2 are equivalent. Do you know what equivalent means? Okay, so we need to ask. In class 1, is the ratio of boys to girls equivalent, it's kind of an important word, to the ratio of boys to girls in class 2. And hopefully you guys can come up with that answer. We will be answering that question in class tomorrow, making sure that you're taking your notes and that you can answer that question. So that's one of those things that I mentioned in the syllabus that you'll have to answer. So we'll get an answer to that one tomorrow. The next one is we need to focus on, let me write my title up here really quick before I forget, because this is how we make sure we know where our notes start and stop. So an experience in relationships as measuring rate, and let's give it a try. So my next question for you to see if you can answer this question is, what is an equivalent ratio to 14/19? Okay, so that is, what is an equivalent ratio that we can come up with? So the way that we can figure that out is we can figure that out by finding a unit rate, possibly. So we have boys to girls. We're comparing the boys to the girls. Does everybody see that? So we have 14 boys for every 19 girls. And so if we figure out a number that we can multiply both sides by, that's called the multiplicative property. And I like to draw a box for us to put those numbers in, remembering that the numbers that go in the box have to be exactly the same. And we're multiplying them because it's multiplicative. You should be able to build a ratio that's equivalent to this. Okay, and so we will practice that. Let's say, what's going to happen if we multiply 14 by 3? If we're doing the multiplicative property, what do we have to do? We have to multiply both sides by 3 because that's the multiplicative property. So 14 times 3, I get 4 times 3 is 12, regroup the 1, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So we get 42 up on the top. And then we do the same thing down on the bottom. 19 times 3, 9 times 3 is 27. Regroup the 2, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. And so we get 57. So our equivalent ratio to 14 to 19 is 42 to 57. That's how you do it. Okay? So let's try another one. What is an equivalent ratio to 13 to 17, which is a little different than our other one, but that's okay. 13 to 17. So now we're going to try same thing, multiplicative. So we're comparing boys to girls, right? And we have boys to girls equals, according to this one, it's 13 to 17. And then we're going to use the multiplicative property. What was it called again? multiplicative property. Okay, and how about if we multiplied both of these by 3? Let's see what happens. Does it always have to be 3? No, it doesn't. It's just I'm using 3 because that for me is a little bit easy. So here we go. 13 times 3. Well, I know 3 times 3 is 9, and I know 3 times 1 is 3. So that would be 39 boys for every 3 times 7 is 21. Regroup the 2. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5 for every 51 girls. So the equivalent ratio for this one, 13 to 17, the equivalent ratio is 39 to 51. Okay? And we can write it both ways. So we can say 14 to 19 is equal to 42 to 57. Does everybody see that? And then there's another way to write it. Let's try this one down here. 13 to 17 is equivalent to 39 to 51. So that answers our question about what equivalent means. What does equivalent mean, everybody? Equivalent means equal to, okay? And that's your job. That's what we're learning about this one, okay? So the thing that you need to write down here as a side note or a rule is multiplying the number of boys and the number of girls by the same amount makes them equivalent. So let's write that with a little star so you don't forget. Multiplying the number of boys and number of girls by the same amount makes them equivalent. And that's just what we did when we drew that little box around and noticed that we multiplied both numbers by 3. That's what they're talking about, by the same amount. So if I multiply boys by 3, I have to multiply girls by 3. If I multiply these boys by 3, I have to multiply these girls by 3. So the number that sits in the box is the same amount that we're referring to down here in this rule. Okay? All right, hopefully you guys all understand that idea. All right, we're down to our last practice, and we're actually going to have you try it. So I have to move on to my next page. I don't know if you guys do. So very quickly, again, getting myself in a good habit, I'm going to write the title one more time because these notes, as they have turned out, are 3 pages long. So when we're doing our ETL check tomorrow, Mrs. Nelson is going to look for at least 3 pages long worth of notes, making sure that you wrote down everything that you were supposed to so that you can use it as a reference guide to help you with this homework that we're going to try in class tomorrow. Okay, so we have one more page, and it is my favorite part of our lesson. It is a try it problem. This is where we actually get to try it in class. So I'm going to write try it because that's what this section of our notes is all about, is you practicing. And it says use the multiplicative property to find the unit rate for each item to determine the better buy. So I'm going to write that down so that you can remember. So use the multiplicative property to find the unit rate for each item to determine the better buy. And you guys, it's so interesting to me because I'm pretty sure that you probably have done this. If you go to a grocery store, I go to Walmart a lot, and you'll notice that on the sticker at Walmart, where it tells you the price, it'll say over in a little box on the side, per one unit, and it gives you the price. So that's what we're doing, is we're finding the unit rate. And I'm actually giving you a Walmart example. So Walmart is having a sale on school supplies. Brand A, I don't know what brand it is, but we can't say names. We'll just call it brand A. Brand A sells 30 pencils for $7.97. Okay? Brand B sells 12 pencils for $4.77. Which is a better buy? Okay, that's your job. And then you're going to tell me, how do you know? Okay, so we need to figure this out, and hopefully you will be able to do that by the time you come to class tomorrow, because this is the practice problem that you're going to do without me, and this one will have the answers up on the board when you come into class tomorrow morning that you're checking while I do an ETL check. Okay? So take a look at that problem, see what you can come up with. Let's quickly go back to our question, because remember, we have to answer our question at the end of our notes so that we know what we learned. How is finding the unit rate helpful when making comparisons between quantities? I think the most important thing that you need to remember about that is a unit rate is how much something costs per one item. So if we go back to our Walmart story, you're trying to figure out, when brand A sells 30 pencils for $7.97, you're trying to figure out how much brand A charges for one pencil. And then you're trying to figure out how much brand B charges for one pencil. And then you compare those two prices. So I'm thinking that once you figure that out, you'll also be able to answer our guiding question for the lesson. All right, boys and girls.